If I were to ask you, what does it mean to be successful? I know that there would be many different answers. Some of us may say, if I'm getting a 4.0 this semester, that's success. Others may say, if I'm making a certain amount of money, or I have a certain number of followers on my blog or on my Instagram account, then that's being successful. For me, a couple years ago, success was being defined as achieving the highest standard I could in my sport, and that was track and field. My sophomore year of high school, I wrote the words state champion on the side of my track spike, because that was a goal that I'd set for myself. In 2016, my senior year, that goal became a reality. I became a state champion in the 110-meter hurdles and the 300-meter hurdles. And at the time, I could not have felt more successful. But honestly, this is in the past. This is something that has already happened. Today, I want to share something with you that will allow you to carry success with you throughout the rest of your life. My name is Jaron Erickson, and today I want to share a little bit about developing a growth mindset. Now, within this presentation, I want to first help us understand what a growth mindset is, as well as who discovered it and how they did so. I then want to transition into sharing 3 strategies about what we can do to develop it to become a part of our own life. So what is the growth mindset? Well, I have an equation to better help us understand. Simply stated, the growth mindset is the belief that one's talents and abilities can be developed through hard work, through good strategies, which I'll share 3 with you today, and through experiences that we have. Now, in order to fully grasp this concept, we must also understand its opposite, which is called the fixed mindset. Now, the fixed mindset is a belief that no matter how hard you work, what strategies you use, or what experiences you have, you will not change. So I'd like to turn our attention to the screen to look at these 2 different heads. Some of us may be looking at the growth mindset and thinking, I think that way. I have those thoughts. But we also may look at the fixed mindset and say, I also have those kind of thoughts. Now, it's important to know that we can have a growth mindset in one aspect of our life, for example, with school, while at the same time having a fixed mindset in a different area, maybe with our fitness, with our exercise. So it's important to evaluate how we are feeling and thinking in each situation we are faced with. Now, these 2 types of thinking have always existed, but it wasn't until about 30 years ago when Professor Carol Dweck of Stanford University was the first to identify what they were. Now, she did so by conducting an experiment on 10-year-old kids to see how they coped with failure. For this experiment, she would give them a series of puzzles that would progressively get harder and harder and harder as they went. Now, Professor Dweck used to think our intelligence was a fixed trait, so it was something that could not change. But it wasn't until she observed a 10-year-old boy who was working on a very difficult puzzle. And this 10-year-old boy exclaimed, "I love a challenge." And for this moment, it clicked for Professor Dweck. She began to realize that this 10-year-old boy did not think he was failing, but instead he understood that he was learning. So it's my hope today that each one of us will be able to learn something about how we can develop a growth mindset to become a part of our own lives. And I will do so by sharing 3 strategies with you given to us by Professor Dweck. The first strategy she gives us is to simply believe that we can improve. A great example of this is Henry Ford, the man who invented the Model T. Now, it may not have been called the growth mindset back then, but Henry Ford sure did have one. In one of his most famous quotes, he says, "If you believe you can do a thing, or you believe you can't do a thing, then you're right." Henry Ford understood that if someone believed they could accomplish a task, they could get there. And if they believed that they'd hold themselves back, well, there's your answer. In her TED Talk, Professor Dweck also shares with us something that she calls the power of yet. And I'll give you an example to better help us understand. Some of us may be thinking, I am not good at public speaking. But we are counseled by Professor Dweck to transform that sentence to become, I am not good at public speaking yet. That 3-letter word at the end of the sentence gives us a pathway into the future. It allows us to have confidence in our abilities, knowing that we may not be where we are right We may not be where we want to be, but we can get there in the future. The second strategy given to us by Professor Dweck is to focus on the process and not on the outcome. A great example of someone who displayed this was Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, we all know, took thousands and thousands of attempts until he finally got the light bulb right. But when asked by the media about his experience, he says, "I have not failed, but I have found 10,000 ways that don't work." Thomas Edison chose to focus on the process. He could have seen those 10,000 attempts as failures, but instead, he chose to view them as stepping stones, leading him to his ultimate goal and ultimate destination. Now, Professor Dweck also tells us that we should praise the processes that we go through, that even the smallest amounts of effort we put towards making a goal can make a difference. And those small things that we do over and over can lead to great things happening within our future. Now, the third strategy Professor Dweck gives us is to get outside of our comfort zones. Now, one of my favorite quotes, shared by a good friend of mine, says, "There is no growth in the comfort zone, and there is no comfort in the growth zone." Each time that we're trying something new and we choose to transition from the comfort zone into the growth zone, it gets a little bit uncomfortable. But we are counseled by Professor Dweck and told that every time we're trying something new, that there are neurons within our minds that are firing, and that new pathways are being created, and that the pathways we already have are being strengthened. She also shares with us that as we choose to get outside of our comfort zone, that we will not view trials as setbacks or difficulties, but instead we will view them as opportunities to challenge ourselves, opportunities to learn and to grow. So today I have shared with you 3 strategies given to us by Professor Dweck about what we can do to develop a growth mindset. The first is to believe that we can improve. The second is to focus on the processes that we go through, not just the outcomes of what happens. And the third is to get outside of our comfort zones and experience the growth zone. So many of us have experienced success before, and that's great. But today, as you choose to develop the growth mindset, you can carry that success with you throughout the rest of your life. Thank you.